Get your face on the pavement! Now! Stop resisting or I will break your arm! Officer Nicholas Bennett didn't wait for compliance. With a guttural grunt, he slammed his knee into the spine of the teenager, driving the boy's face into the scorching asphalt. "I'm not resisting," the boy gasped, his voice choked by dust. "Shut up! You're done!" Bennett roared, reaching for his cuffs, drunk on power. He thought he had a predator's catch. He didn't know he had just stepped into a lion's den. He didn't see the 10 black SUVs silently locking down the perimeter, or the sniper scopes glinting from the roof. The hunter was about to become the prey. Emory Knight adjusted the collar of his oversized hoodie, catching his reflection in the pristine glass of the luxury watch store. To the casual observer, he was just another teenager loitering outside the high-end Obsidian Mall. A black kid in distressed jeans and expensive sneakers, aimlessly scrolling on his phone. He looked bored. He looked harmless. He looked like he didn't belong in the affluent suburb of Crestwood, at least not according to the unspoken rules of the local patrol. But Emory Knight was 22, not 17, and the phone in his hand wasn't scrolling TikTok. It was running a localized packet sniffer, intercepting the encrypted communications of the Crestwood Police Department's tactical channel. "Heart rate is 110, Emory. Breathe," a cool female voice echoed in his invisible earpiece. Emory didn't move his lips. He simply tapped the side of his phone twice. Message received. It was Eleanor Ramsey, his handler, stationed in a command van 3 blocks away. She was the eyes. He was the bait. The heat radiating off the mall's parking lot was suffocating. It was a Tuesday afternoon, the kind of slow, lazy day that made bad cops restless. Emory shifted his weight, leaning against a concrete planter. He felt the heavy, reassuring weight of the hidden Kevlar weave beneath his hoodie, a precaution that felt increasingly necessary. "Target vehicle approaching," Elena's voice clipped through the comms. "Unit 4 Alpha. It's Bennett and Walker." Emory's eyes narrowed slightly behind his sunglasses. Officer Nicholas Bennett, a 15-year veteran with more excessive force complaints than commendations, yet somehow they all vanished before internal affairs could touch him. He was the enforcer for a corruption ring that went all the way up to Chief Jasper Thompson. They weren't just roughing people up. They were shaking down local businesses and planting evidence on anyone who refused to pay protection money. Today, they were supposed to collect a package from a contact inside the mall. Emory was standing exactly where the contact was supposed to be. A black and white cruiser rolled around the corner, prowling slowly like a shark in shallow water. The engine hummed with a low menace. Inside, Emory could see the silhouette of the driver, Bennett. Beside him sat Jackson Walker, the rookie. Walker was the variable. Young, idealistic, reportedly uncomfortable with Bennett's methods, but too scared to break the blue wall of silence. The cruiser slowed to a crawl as it passed Emory. Bennett turned his head. Even through the tint and the distance, Emory felt the weight of the man's glare. It was a look of ownership, of territorial aggression. "He's clocked you," Elena warned. "Stay passive. Let him initiate." Emory looked down at his phone, feigning ignorance. "Come on, Nicholas. Be the bully everyone says you are." Inside the cruiser, the air conditioning was blasting, but the atmosphere was thick with tension. "Look at this," Nicholas Bennett muttered, tapping the steering wheel with a thick, calloused finger. "Loitering, middle of the day, probably waiting for a runner." Jackson Walker shifted in the passenger seat. He looked nervous. "Nick, he's just a kid on a phone. We're here for the pickup, remember? The chief said to keep this lot clean," Bennett snapped, cutting the rookie off. "You see the shoes? Those are $500 sneakers. You think he bought those mowing lawns?" "Maybe his parents bought them," Walker suggested weakly. Bennett scoffed, a wet, ugly sound. "Not in this zip code. He's a spotter, or he's holding. Either way, he's in my way." Bennett slammed the gear shift into park, not in a spot, but directly in the fire lane, blocking the pedestrian exit. The message was clear. "I do what I want." "Nick, come on!" Walker pleaded, looking at the dashboard clock. "The drop is in 10 minutes. We don't have time for a stop and frisk." "This isn't a stop and frisk, Jackson. This is proactive policing." Bennett unbuckled his seatbelt, the leather of his utility belt creaking under the strain of his gut. "Watch and learn. This is how you assert dominance before the crime even happens." Bennett kicked the door open. The heat hit him, but it only fueled his irritation. He adjusted his sunglasses and hitched up his pants, marching toward the kid leaning on the planter. Emery saw the approach in his peripheral vision. He didn't look up until Bennett's shadow fell over him, blocking out the sun. "Help you, officer?" Emery asked, his voice pitch-perfect, youthful, slightly defensive, but polite. "Get off the phone," Bennett commanded, his hand resting casually, terrifyingly, near his holster. Emery hesitated, then lowered the device. "Is there a problem? I'm waiting for my mom. She's in Neiman Marcus." "I don't care who you're waiting for. You fit the description of a suspect involved in a shoplifting ring operating in this sector." Bennett lied. It was smooth, practiced. He had said it 1,000 times. "I haven't been in any stores," Emery said, straightening up. He made sure to keep his hands visible. "You can check the cameras." "Don't get smart with me, boy." Bennett stepped into Emery's personal space, radiating the smell of stale coffee and aggression. "Turn around. Hands on the planter, now." "Sir, I haven't done anything. Am I under arrest?" "I said turn around." Bennett's voice rose, cracking like a whip across the parking lot. A few shoppers stopped to watch. A mother hurried her children into a minivan. From the cruiser, Walker watched, his stomach churning. He gripped the door handle, debating whether to intervene. He knew this script. Bennett would provoke, the kid would flinch, and Bennett would use it as an excuse to escalate. "Emery!" Elena's voice was a whisper of steel in his ear. "Teams are moving to position. Do not engage physically. Let him dig the hole." Emery took a slow breath. He turned around, placing his palms flat on the hot concrete of the planter. "I'm complying, officer. I'm complying." "Spread 'em," Bennett barked, kicking Emery's feet apart with unnecessary force. He began the pat-down, his hands rough, searching not for weapons but for an excuse. "We have visual," Elena said. "Archer is 3 minutes out. Hold the line, Emery." Bennett's hand paused over Emery's hoodie pocket. He leaned in close, his hot breath against Emery's ear. "You picked the wrong day to hang out on my beat, kid. Whatever you're holding, it's mine now." Emery closed his eyes. "Got you." The contact between Bennett's hands and Emery's frame was invasive, designed to humiliate. Bennett patted down Emery's legs, moving up to his waist, checking the waistband of his jeans. It was a violation of standard procedure, aggressive and sloppy. "What's in the pocket?" Bennett demanded, jabbing a finger into Emery's side. "It's my wallet," Emery said, his voice tight. "And my keys." Bennett reached in and yanked them out, tossing them onto the ground. The keys skittered across the pavement. The leather wallet flopped open. "Looks like drug money to me," Bennett sneered, seeing the cash inside. It was $200, hardly a kingpin's hoard, but to Bennett, it was validation. "That's my birthday money," Emery said, injecting a tremor of fear into his voice. He had to sell the panic. "Sir, please." "Shut up!" Bennett grabbed the back of Emery's neck, squeezing the pressure point. "I know a dealer when I see one." "Who do you work for? Who's the supplier?" "I don't know what you're talking about." "Jackson, get out here!" Bennett yelled over his shoulder. Officer Jackson Walker stepped out of the cruiser, adjusting his cap. He looked pale. He walked over slowly, scanning the gathering crowd. People were pulling out phones. The red recording lights were blinking. "Nick, everyone's watching," Walker murmured, stepping up beside his partner. "Maybe we just cut him loose. He doesn't have anything." "He has attitude," Bennett spat, "and I say he's resisting." "I'm not resisting," Emery shouted, loud enough for the cameras to pick up. "I'm standing still." "He's reaching!" Bennett screamed, a hallucination of a threat that existed only in his desire for violence. Before Walker could stop him, Bennett hooked his leg behind Emery's knee and threw his weight forward. The world tilted violently. Emery, trained in judo and close-quarters combat, had to override years of muscle memory that screamed at him to counter-throw Bennett onto his back. Instead, he went limp. He hit the asphalt hard. His cheek scraped against the grit. The impact knocked the wind out of him, a genuine gasp of pain escaping his lips. "Get your face on the pavement now! Stop resisting or I will break your arm!" That was the hook. The moment the violence went from procedural to criminal. Bennett dropped his knee onto Emery's spine, right between the shoulder blades. The weight was crushing. Emery grunted, his vision swimming for a second. "Get off him!" a woman in the crowd screamed. "He didn't do anything!" "Back up!" Walker shouted at the crowd, his hand on his taser, though he looked terrified. "Everyone stay back!" Bennett was in a frenzy. He grabbed Emery's left wrist and wrenched it behind his back, twisting it to a near breaking point. The pain was white-hot. Emery bit his lip to keep from crying out, calculating the angles. If Bennett pushed 2 more inches, the rotator cuff would tear. "Stop fighting me!" Bennett roared, panting heavily. He was performing for an audience he despised, justifying his brutality with volume. "I'm not fighting," Emery wheezed, his face pressed into the dirt. Bennett leaned down, his lips brushing Emery's ear again, unseen by the cameras. "You're going to jail, boy. And before we get there, you're going to tell me where the stash is, or you're going to fall down a flight of stairs at the precinct. Do you understand me?" Then Bennett did the unthinkable. Or rather, the inevitable. Emery felt Bennett's free hand, the one not twisting his arm, slide toward his own utility belt. But he didn't reach for cuffs. He reached into a pouch on his tactical vest. Emery's eyes, pressed near the ground, saw the glint of metal. A small, snub-nosed revolver. A drop gun. An untraceable weapon kept for exactly this kind of situation, to turn a brutality lawsuit into a justified shooting or a heavy felony charge. "Gun!" Bennett screamed. "He's got a gun!" The crowd screamed. People scrambled back. Walker froze. "Nick, I didn't see a—" "I said he has a gun!" Bennett yelled, jamming the cold metal of the drop gun into Emery's waistband at the small of his back, then immediately discovering it. "Drop it! Drop it now!" It was a clumsy sleight of hand, sloppy and arrogant. Bennett assumed no one could see the transfer at this angle. He was wrong. High above, a drone the size of a hummingbird, piloted by Elena Ramsey, hovered silently. Its 8K camera captured every frame of the plant in high definition. "We have the plant." Elena's voice was ice-cold, void of all emotion now. "The predicate act is confirmed. Strike team, go, go, go." Emery, pinned under the crushing weight of a corrupt man, smiled into the asphalt. Checkmate. Bennett felt a surge of triumph. He had the gun secured in his hand now, waving it so the crowd could see. He had the narrative. He was the hero who took down an armed thug. "Get the cuffs on him, Walker, now!" Bennett shouted, sweat dripping from his nose onto Emery's neck. Walker fumbled for his handcuffs, his hands shaking. "Nick, this feels wrong. I didn't see him reach. Just cuff him." The metallic click-click of the handcuffs tightening around Emery's wrists signaled the end of the act. Bennett stood up, hauling Emery to his feet by the chain of the cuffs, wrenching his shoulders painfully. "You're done, kid," Bennett sneered, holstering the drop gun into an evidence bag he pulled from his pocket. Assault on an officer, possession of an unregistered firearm, resisting arrest. You're never seeing sunlight again. Emery stood steady. His cheek was bleeding, his hoodie was torn, and his jeans were covered in dust. But his eyes, dark, intense, and eerily calm, locked onto Bennett's. "Officer Bennett," Emery said, his voice surprisingly clear. I'm going to give you one chance to remove these cuffs and surrender. Bennett blinked. He laughed, a harsh barking sound. Did you hit your head, boy? Surrender? I'm the law. Not anymore, Emery said. Bennett frowned. The air around them seemed to change. The ambient noise of the mall traffic, the shouting crowd, the wind. It all seemed to vanish, replaced by a deep, vibrating rumble. Bennett looked at Walker. Walker was staring past Bennett, his mouth hanging open. His face had gone from pale to ghost white. Nick, Walker whispered. Look. Bennett turned around. The exit roads to the mall were blocked, not by local police cruisers, but by matte black Chevrolet Suburbans. Massive armored vehicles with government plates. They had appeared silently, rolling in while Bennett was busy screaming. 4 of them, then 6, then 10. They formed a perfect semicircle around the parking lot, boxing the 2 officers and their captive in against the mall entrance. Bennett's heart hammered against his ribs. Who called the feds? Did you call the feds, Jackson? I didn't call anyone, Jackson stammered. The doors of the SUVs opened in perfect synchronization. Men and women poured out. They didn't move like mall cops. They didn't move like the patrolmen Bennett drank beer with. They moved with the fluid, lethal grace of apex predators. They wore navy blue windbreakers with bold yellow letters on the back and chest, FBI. They carried carbines, short-barreled rifles, slung low and ready. They fanned out, creating a kill box. Bennett instinctively reached for his radio. Dispatch, I have unidentified federal agents on scene, requesting backup immediately. Static, just white noise. Your comms are jammed, Nicholas, Emery said softly. And your backup isn't coming. Chief Thompson is currently being indicted in his office. Bennett spun back to the kid. Who are you? From the center SUV, a man stepped out. He was tall, wearing a tailored suit beneath a tactical vest. He had silver hair and a face carved from granite. This was Special Agent in Charge Archer Yates, a legend in the Bureau's Organized Crime Division. Yates didn't yell. He didn't need to. He raised a megaphone, his voice amplified, booming across the lot, echoing off the glass storefronts. Officer Nicholas Bennett. Officer Jackson Walker, freeze! Bennett's hand hovered near his holster, a suicidal reflex. Don't do it, Yates commanded, his voice dropping an octave. Put your hands on your heads, now! 20 rifles raised simultaneously, 20 red laser dots dancing across Bennett's chest and forehead. Bennett froze. The world slowed down. He looked at the laser dot on his own uniform, right over his heart. He looked at the crowd, who had gone silent, sensing the monumental shift in power. He looked at the teenager in cuffs. Emery Knight rolled his neck, working out a kink. I told you, Nick. You're done. This is a mistake, Bennett yelled, his voice cracking. I just took down an armed suspect. This kid has a gun. Archer Yates began to walk forward, crossing the empty space of the parking lot. He moved with terrifying confidence. He was flanked by 2 agents who kept their weapons trained on Bennett's face. That kid, Yates said, his voice projecting without the megaphone now as he got closer, is Special Agent Emery Knight. And that gun you planted on him, it's serial number 459 Delta, stolen from the CPD evidence locker 3 years ago. We've been tracking it. Bennett's knees turned to water. The blood drained from his face so fast he felt dizzy. Special Agent. The realization hit him like a physical blow. The loitering, the expensive shoes, the defiance. It wasn't random. It was a performance. Unlock him, Yates ordered, stopping 5 feet from Bennett. Bennett couldn't move. His hands were paralyzed claws. I said unlock him, Yates barked. Bennett fumbled for his keys, his fingers shaking so violently he dropped them. They clattered on the asphalt next to Emery's sneakers. Emery sighed. He turned his back to Bennett, presenting his bound wrists. Key is on the ground, Nick. Pick it up. Bennett slowly bent down, his tactical gear feeling heavy and ridiculous now. He picked up the key. He unlocked the cuffs. As soon as the metal clicked open, Emery spun around. He didn't rub his wrists. He didn't complain about the pain. He stripped off the torn hoodie, revealing a compact tactical vest beneath it, complete with his own badge clipped to the chest. Emery looked at Bennett, his eyes cold and hard. "Nicholas Bennett, you are under arrest for racketeering, evidence tampering, assault on a federal officer, and deprivation of rights under color of law." Emery reached into his back pocket, not for a weapon, but for his own pair of handcuffs. "Turn around," Emery said. Bennett stood there, his mouth working, no sound coming out. The bully was gone. All that was left was a small, scared man surrounded by the consequences of his own actions. "Turn around," Emery shouted, channeling all the anger of the takedown into the command. Bennett turned. Emery slapped the cuffs on him, tight. He didn't slam Bennett's face into the ground. He didn't twist his arm. He simply secured him. "That," Emery whispered into Bennett's ear, echoing the corruption of the earlier moment with the purity of justice, "is how you do the job properly." Emery looked up at Archer Yates. "Situation secure. Secure Walker, but keep him separate." He hesitated. Yates nodded. "Good work, Knight." "Are you injured?" Emery wiped the blood from his cheek with his shoulder. "I'll live, but he ruined my favorite hoodie." As the agents moved in to drag a sobbing Bennett toward the SUVs, the crowd erupted, not in panic, but in applause. But the nightmare wasn't over. As they marched Bennett away, a black sedan screeched into the parking lot, bypassing the blockade. It had official diplomatic plates. Emery stiffened. "That's not us." Yates narrowed his eyes. "No, that's the chief's lawyer, or his fixer." The black sedan with the diplomatic plates didn't just park. It claimed the asphalt like a conquering flag. The engine died, and the rear door swung open. A man stepped out, the soles of his Italian leather shoes making a crisp sound on the pavement that seemed to cut through the heavy, post-adrenaline silence of the parking lot. He was dressed in a suit that cost more than Nicholas Bennett's annual salary. He was older, perhaps 60, with silver hair swept back immaculately and a face that was handsome in a predatory, reptilian way. He didn't look at the FBI agents training their weapons on him. He didn't look at Emery Knight. He walked straight toward Archer Yates. "Atticus Langford," Yates said, his voice dropping to a gravelly growl. "I should have known. Who are you representing today? The devil or just one of his minor demons?" Atticus Langford smiled, a thin, mirthless expression that didn't reach his cold blue eyes. "Director Yates, always a pleasure. And please, lower the theatrics. My client, Chief Jasper Thompson, has authorized me to oversee the legal welfare of his officers." "Your client is currently in handcuffs," Yates snapped. "And so is this one." He gestured to Bennett, who was watching Langford with a desperate, pathetic hope. "Mr. Bennett," Langford said, finally acknowledging the disgraced officer, "you look uncomfortable." "Mr. Langford, you gotta get me out of this," Bennett pleaded, straining against Emery's grip. "They set me up! Entrapment! It was entrapment!" "Silence, Nicholas," Langford said softly. "Let the adults talk." He turned back to Yates. "I have a writ of habeas corpus drafted and a judge on speed dial who is very concerned about the federal overreach occurring in his jurisdiction. You have no jurisdiction to hold a municipal officer on a local sidewalk without a federal warrant." "We have a federal warrant," Emery interrupted, stepping forward. He held up a sealed document in a plastic evidence bag. "RICO predicate acts, conspiracy to distribute, public corruption, and assault on a federal officer. That last one is me, and I'm pressing charges to the fullest extent." Langford looked at Emery, really looked at him for the first time. His eyes scanned the young agent from his dusty sneakers to the tactical vest. There was a flicker of something in Langford's eyes, not fear, but calculation. "Agent Knight," Langford purred, "the prodigy. I've read your file. impressive service record, tragic family history. How is your sister?" Emery stiffened. The air in his lungs turned to ice. "You keep her name out of your mouth." "Touchy," Langford noted. He turned back to Yates. "Here is the reality, Archer. You can arrest Officer Bennett, you can arrest Chief Thompson, but the infrastructure of this city, the people who actually run things, they don't like interruptions. You're kicking a hornet's nest." "Hey, we brought exterminators," Yates said, signaling his agents. "Get Bennett in the SUV, now!" As two agents dragged Bennett away, Langford stepped closer to Bennett. "Nicholas," he said, his voice low but audible. "Remember your oath. Loyalty above all. The department takes care of its own. If you talk, well, accidents happen in federal custody every day." Bennett's face went white. The hope vanished, replaced by a terror far deeper than the fear of prison. He realized then that Langford wasn't there to save him. He was there to silence him. "Get him out of here!" Emery shouted, shoving Bennett toward the waiting SUV. "Move!" As the convoy prepared to leave, Langford retreated to his sedan. Before he got in, he looked back at Emery. He mimicked a gun with his hand, pointed it at Emery, and winked. Then he was gone, the black sedan slipping away like a shadow. "He threatened a federal witness," Emery seethed, watching the car disappear. "We should have brought him in." "He has diplomatic immunity through a consultancy with the consulate," Yates said, frustration etched into his features. "We touch him. It's an international incident. We have to beat him on the evidence." "Bennett is the key," Emery said, watching the SUV holding the prisoner. "Langford just terrified him. If we can flip Bennett, we get Thompson. We get Thompson, we get the whole network." "Then you better work fast," Yates said, "because Langford isn't going to wait for a trial. He's going to clean house." The interrogation room at the FBI field office was a stark contrast to the chaotic heat of the mall parking lot. It was cold, sterile, and smelled of antiseptic. Nicholas Bennett sat handcuffed to the table, shivering in his undershirt. They had taken his uniform, his belt, his dignity. Emery stood on the other side of the one-way mirror, watching. Elena Ramsey stood next to him, tapping on a tablet. "He's breaking," Elena observed. "Heart rate is erratic. He's terrified." "Langford got to him," Emery said. "He thinks if he talks, he's dead. He thinks if he stays quiet, Langford will fix it. We need to shatter that illusion." Emery opened the door and walked in. He carried 2 cups of coffee and a thick file folder. He sat down opposite Bennett, sliding 1 cup across the metal table. "Black, 2 sugars," Emery said. "Just how you like it. I checked your break room logs." Bennett stared at the cup suspiciously. "I don't want your coffee. I want my lawyer." "You have a lawyer," Emery said calmly. "A public defender is on his way. But if you're waiting for Atticus Langford, he's not coming, Nick." He said he's handling it," Bennett stammered. Emery opened the file folder. He pulled out a photograph and slid it across the table. It was a picture of a car crash, a twisted wreck of metal and fire. "This is Officer Marcus Dean," Emery said. 3 years ago, he was about to testify against Chief Thompson for skimming drug seizures. Langford told him to stay quiet, said he'd handle it. Dean's brakes failed on the I-95 off-ramp 2 days later. Bennett looked at the photo, his Adam's apple bobbing. Emery slid another photo, a man hanging in a cell. Sergeant Paulson, last year. Suicide. He was left alone for 10 minutes in holding after Langford visited him. "Stop it," Bennett whispered. "Langford isn't your savior, Nick," Emery said, leaning in. "He's the cleaner. He showed up at the mall to make sure you saw him. To remind you that he can reach you anywhere. The only reason you're alive right now is because you're in federal custody. But if you don't give us something, if you're not useful, we can't put you in witness protection. You go to general population. And Langford has friends in Gen Pop." Bennett began to cry. Great, heaving sobs that shook his heavy frame. "I didn't know," he blubbered. I just wanted to make my numbers. The chief said we had to make numbers. I know, Emery said, his voice softening. But it's bigger than numbers now. Where is the stash, Nick? The drop you were supposed to make today? Where does the money go? Bennett wiped his nose on his shoulder. He looked around the room, checking for shadows. The old mill, he whispered. The abandoned textile mill on the east side, Sector 4, the basement levels. That's where they process it. Process what? Emery asked. Drugs? Bennett shook his head. Not just drugs. Everything. Stolen goods, weapons, and people. Emery felt a chill run down his spine. People? They bring them in containers, Bennett said, his voice barely audible. Girls, mostly runaways. They hold them there until they can move them out of state. Tonight. There's a shipment tonight. That's why the chief was so on edge. It's a big one. Emery stood up abruptly. He banged on the glass. Yates entered the room instantly. Did you get that? Emery asked. We got it, Yates said, his face grim. Human trafficking. That escalates this to a whole new level. We have to move, Emery said. Tonight. If Langford knows Bennett has been taken, he'll scrub the site. Those girls will disappear. It's a fortress, Bennett warned, looking up with red-rimmed eyes. The mill. It's guarded by the cartel, not cops. Heavily armed. You can't just knock on the door. We're not going to knock, Emery said, checking his weapon. We're going to kick it down. The textile mill was a rotting skeleton of industry, a sprawling complex of brick and shattered glass looming against the night sky. The moon was obscured by heavy clouds, providing natural cover for the FBI tactical teams moving through the overgrown sawgrass. Emery was in the lead stack, dressed in full tactical gear now. Black fatigues, body armor, night vision goggles flipped up on his helmet. He held a suppressed MP5, his movements silent and precise. Behind him was Jackson Walker. Yates had made the call to bring the rookie. Walker knew the layout of the mill. His father had worked there before it closed. It was a risk, but Walker was desperate to redeem himself, and they needed a guide. Entry point Alpha is ahead, Walker whispered into his comms. It's a storm drain, leads directly to the boiler room. Copy, Emery replied. Team 1 with me. Team 2, cover the loading docks. Team 3, perimeter hold, no one leaves. They moved into the drain. The air was damp and smelled of rust and decay. They waded through ankle-deep water, the only sound the rhythmic dripping of condensation. As they reached the boiler room door, Emery signaled for a halt. He slid a fiber-optic camera under the door. On the small screen on his wrist, he saw the basement. It was a hive of activity. Men with AK-47s were patrolling catwalks. Below, in the main pit, were rows of cots. Huddled on them were dozens of young women looking terrified and exhausted. Visual confirmed, Emery whispered. Hostages present, at least 20 hostiles, heavy weapons. We execute on my mark. Yates's voice came over the earpiece. Flashbangs and gas. Disorient and clear. Watch your crossfire. Emery took a deep breath. He looked at Walker. The kid was shaking, but he nodded. Breach, Emery commanded. Walker kicked the door. It flew open with a metallic crash. Emery tossed a flashbang grenade into the center of the room. Bang! A blinding white light seared the darkness, followed by a deafening roar. FBI, get down, get down! The team surged into the room. Chaos erupted. The cartel guards, blinded and deafened, fired wildly. Bullets sparked off the metal pipes and brick walls. Emery moved methodically, identifying targets. He double-tapped a gunman on the catwalk who was raising a rifle toward the hostages. The man crumpled, falling over the railing. Secure the hostages! Emery yelled, advancing through the smoke. A guard popped up from behind a crate, firing an Uzi. Emery dove behind a pillar as concrete chips rained down on him. He leaned out, fired 2 shots, and the guard went silent. Clear left! Clear right! The firefight was intense but short. The element of surprise had decimated the guard's defense. Within 2 minutes, the room was secured. Emery holstered his weapon and ran toward the cots. "It's okay. We're federal agents. You're safe now." The women were crying, huddled together. Emery scanned their faces, checking for injuries. Suddenly, a massive explosion rocked the building. The floor beneath them shook violently. Dust and debris rained from the ceiling. "Report!" Yates yelled over the comms. "What was that?" "Booby trap!" a voice screamed from the loading dock team. "They rigged the support pillars! The east wing is collapsing!" "They're bringing the building down on us," Emery realized with horror. "Langford, he's scrubbing the site, with us inside." "Everyone out! Now! Evacuate!" Yates ordered. Emery grabbed 2 of the women, pulling them to their feet. "Run! Go to the exit! Move!" The team scrambled, guiding the hostages toward the storm drain. The groaning of twisting metal filled the air. A massive concrete beam crashed down where Emery had been standing seconds before, crushing the cots. "Walker, guide them out!" Emery shouted. "I'm on it!" Walker yelled, ushering the group into the tunnel. Emery stayed back, sweeping the room to make sure no one was left behind. Through the swirling dust, he saw a movement near the far wall. A steel door he hadn't noticed before. It was slightly ajar. Inside, he saw a man frantically shredding documents and smashing hard drives. It was Chief Jasper Thompson. "Thompson!" Emery yelled, raising his weapon. "Freeze!" Thompson looked up. He looked deranged, his uniform disheveled. He held a lighter in one hand and a bottle of accelerant in the other. "You can't have it!" Thompson screamed. "He'll kill my family if you find this!" "Put the lighter down, Chief!" Emery advanced slowly. The ceiling above them groaned ominously. "It's too late," Thompson smiled, a sad, broken expression. "Langford always wins." Thompson dropped the lighter. The room erupted in flames. The fire suppression system, filled not with water but with something flammable, sprayed from the ceiling. Emery had no choice. He turned and sprinted for the tunnel. The heat was searing, singing the hair on his arms. He dove into the storm drain just as the boiler room behind him turned into an inferno. He scrambled through the water, the roar of the collapsing building chasing him. He burst out into the night air, coughing, lungs burning. He collapsed on the grass, gasping for air. Walker was there, pulling him up. "Did you get him?" Walker asked. "Did you get the chief?" Emery looked back at the mill. The entire structure was imploding, consumed by fire. "No," Emery coughed. "He's gone, and the evidence is gone with him." Yates walked over, his face illuminated by the blaze. "We got the girls, Emery. That's the win. We saved 30 lives tonight." Emery watched the flames. "We saved the victims, but the monster is still out there, and now he knows we're coming." He looked at the fire, and in the dancing flames he imagined Atticus Langford's winking face. "This isn't over," Emery whispered. "It's war." The smoke from the mill fire still clung to Emery's clothes 3 days later. The office of the FBI Field Command was quiet, a stark contrast to the roar of the inferno that had consumed Chief Thompson and the physical evidence. "We have nothing," Yates said, rubbing his temples. "Langford is ghosting. His diplomatic status has him shielded in the consulate downtown. We can't touch him." Emery sat at his desk, staring at a single, charred piece of metal, a melted smartwatch recovered from Thompson's body. Thompson said Langford would kill his family. He was terrified. A man that's scared doesn't just die. He tries to buy a way out. "The watch is fried, Emery," Elena said gently, her fingers flying across her own keyboard. "The lab couldn't pull a single byte of data off it." "It wasn't the watch," Emery murmured, his mind racing back to the moment in the fire. He didn't look at the watch. He dropped the lighter, but before that, he tapped his chest, over his heart. Emery stood up, his eyes widening. "The body cam. Thompson was wearing a body cam beneath his uniform shirt. He wasn't on patrol, so why was he wearing it?" To record meetings, Yates realized. Insurance. The camera melted, Elena pointed out. But the upload, Emery countered. CPD body cams have a cloud backup feature if triggered manually. If he tapped it, Elena's eyes lit up. She began typing furiously. Accessing the CPD server, it's locked down by Langford's lawyers. But if I backdoor through the maintenance port we used for the sting, a progress bar appeared on the main screen. Access granted. There's one file, Elena whispered. Uploaded 3 minutes before the explosion. It's not video, it's audio. She pressed play. The room filled with the crackle of fire and the heavy breathing of Chief Thompson. Then a voice. Not Thompson's. Langford's voice, recorded clearly. Likely from an earlier meeting Thompson had spliced in or played back to himself. Burn it all, Jasper, the girls, the drugs, I don't care. If you don't scrub that mill, I'll have your wife and kids skinned alive. Do it, and then kill yourself. It's the only way to save them. The recording ended. Silence hung in the room. It was a death threat, a confession to conspiracy and solicitation of murder. Is that enough? Emery asked, his fists clenched. It proves intent, Yates said, standing up and buttoning his jacket. But it doesn't strip his immunity. He's still a consultant for a foreign consulate. We need them to disavow him. How do we do that? Elena asked. Emery looked at the screen, then at the news playing on the TV in the corner, a report about the rescued girls. We don't go to a judge. We go to the world. Leak it. Yates paused. Leaking evidence was a career ender. If you do this, Emery, there's no coming back. You'll be suspended, maybe prosecuted. Emery didn't hesitate. He burned people alive, Archer. I don't care about my career. I care about the collar. Yates looked at his best agent, then slowly turned his back. I'm going to get coffee. It might take me 10 minutes. What happens to that file in the meantime is none of my business. Emery smiled grimly. He nodded to Elena. Send it to every news outlet, every embassy, and the consulate's home office. Burn his shield. Atticus Langford sat in the VIP lounge of the private airfield, sipping a scotch that was older than the waitress serving it. His private jet was fueling on the tarmac, ready to whisk him away to a non-extradition country where his millions were already waiting. He checked his phone. No calls. Perfect. The American news cycle moved fast. The mill fire was already becoming old news. He had won. Again. The lounge doors burst open. Langford didn't flinch. He expected his pilot. Instead, he saw Emery Knight. Emery was alone. He wore his tactical vest, his badge gleaming under the harsh fluorescent lights. He looked tired, battered, but his eyes were burning. Agent Knight, Langford sighed, setting down his glass. This is harassment. I am a diplomat. You have no authority here. I'm not here to arrest you, Atticus, Emery said, walking slowly toward the bar. I'm just here to say goodbye. Langford chuckled. Touching. But you're too late. My plane leaves in 20 minutes, and you can't stop it. I don't have to, Emery said, pointing to the TV mounted above the bar. Langford turned. The screen was flashing with a breaking news banner. The audio was muted, but the headline screamed in bold red letters, Diplomat recorded ordering mass murder. Consulate revokes status. Langford's glass slipped from his hand, shattering on the floor. You leaked it, Langford whispered, his face draining of color. You can't do that. That's illegal. Sue me, Emery said. Langford grabbed his phone. It was dead. Service cut. Your accounts are frozen, Emery said, stepping closer. Your passport has been flagged by Interpol. Your pilot has been ordered to stand down. You're not a diplomat anymore, Atticus. You're just a fugitive. Langford's composure cracked. The reptilian mask fell away, revealing a cornered rat. He reached into his jacket, not for a phone this time, but for a small pistol. I won't go to prison, Langford screamed, raising the gun. Crack. The glass of the lounge window shattered behind Langford. A single shot, fired not by Emery, but from outside. Langford screamed, dropping the gun as a bullet tore through his shoulder. He collapsed, clutching the wound, writhing in the spilled scotch and broken glass. Emery didn't even draw his weapon. He looked out the window to the tarmac, where Archer Yates stood with a sniper rifle lowered. "Nice shot, boss," Emery muttered into his comms. "He was aiming at a federal agent," Yates's voice crackled back. "Justified." Emery walked over to Langford, who was whimpering on the floor. The arrogance was gone. The power was gone. "You have the right to remain silent," Emery said, kicking the gun away. "But I really hope you don't. I want to hear you beg." 6 months had passed, but time moved differently inside the walls of the high-security state penitentiary. It was viscous, thick with tension and the smell of industrial disinfectant, barely masking the scent of unwashed bodies and fear. The cafeteria was a cavernous hall of echoing noise, the clatter of metal trays, the murmur of hundreds of men, the sharp bark of corrections officers. But at a small stainless steel table in the far corner, there was a bubble of terrified silence. Nicholas Bennett sat alone. He was unrecognizable from the man who had terrorized the mall parking lot. He had lost 50 pounds, his uniform hanging off a frame that was now gaunt and hunched. His hair, once kept in a severe military-style buzz cut, was patchy and graying. His eyes darted constantly, scanning the room, checking the exits, watching the guards who looked at him with open disdain. He wasn't a cop anymore. He wasn't Officer Bennett. He was inmate 8940, a dirty badge. And in the hierarchy of prison, there was nothing lower. He kept his head down, shoveling gray, flavorless mush into his mouth, trying to make himself small, trying to be invisible. "Hey, officer!" a deep voice rumbled, vibrating through the metal table. Bennett froze. The spoon halted halfway to his mouth. He didn't look up. Maybe if he didn't acknowledge it, they would go away. "I'm talking to you, officer." The voice came again, harder this time. Bennett slowly lifted his eyes. 3 men stood over him, blocking out the harsh overhead lights. They were massive, their arms covered in ink. Bennett recognized the man in the middle, Marcus "Tiny" Williams. 5 years ago, Bennett had arrested him for possession. Bennett had planted an extra ounce of cocaine in his car to ensure a felony charge just to meet a quota. I don't want any trouble, Marcus," Bennett whispered, his voice trembling. Marcus smiled, revealing a gold tooth. He sat down opposite Bennett, invading his space. The other 2 men stood guard, blocking the view of the COs. "No trouble," Marcus said smoothly, picking up Bennett's apple. He took a loud, crunching bite. "Just checking in on our favorite public servant. The food here isn't quite as good as the free donuts you used to shake down from the bakery on 4th Street, is it?" "Please," Bennett pleaded, sweat beading on his forehead. "I'm just doing my time." "We're all doing time, Nick," Marcus leaned in, his voice dropping to a lethal whisper. "But some of us are doing time because of you. Do you know how many guys in this block you put away? How many families you broke just because you felt like being a tough guy?" Bennett swallowed hard, his throat dry as sandpaper. "I was just following orders." "That's what they all say," Marcus sneered. He crushed the half-eaten apple in his hand, juice dripping onto the table like blood. "You see, out there you had the gun. You had the badge. You had the backup. In here, you're just meat." Marcus stood up, wiping his hand on Bennett's shirt. "Sleep tight, officer. We'll be seeing you in the yard." As they walked away, Bennett put his head in his hands. His body shook with silent sobs. This was his life now. Every day was a negotiation for survival. Every night was spent listening to the footsteps in the dark, wondering if the cell door would slide open. The power he had abused was gone, turned against him in the most brutal way possible. He was the predator who had become the prey, trapped in a cage of his own making. 2,000 miles away, in the desolate high desert of Colorado, the silence was even worse. In the federal Supermax facility, Atticus Langford sat in a solitary confinement cell. It was a concrete box, 7 feet by 12, a poured concrete slab for a bed, a stainless steel toilet sink combo, a shower on a timer, and a single slit window 4 inches wide that looked out at nothing but the sky, designed so you couldn't tell where you were in the complex. There was no human contact, no mess hall, no yard time with others, just 23 hours a day in the box and 1 hour in a solitary exercise cage. Langford paced the length of the cell. 4 steps. Turn, 4 steps. Turn. He had done this 10,000 times. He wore an orange jumpsuit that chafed his skin. The expensive Italian suits, the silk ties, the Patek Philippe watch. They were memories from another life. A life that felt like a hallucination. "Guard!" Langford screamed at the heavy steel door. "Guard! I demand to see my attorney! I demand a phone call!" His voice didn't echo. The soundproofing absorbed it instantly. He waited for a response, a curse, a command to shut up. Anything. But there was nothing. Just the low hum of the ventilation system. Langford slumped against the wall, sliding down to the cold floor. He had tried to buy the guards during his first week. He offered them $10,000 just to sneak a message out. They didn't even blink. He tried to threaten them with his connections in Washington. They just looked through him like he was glass. He was radioactive. The mighty fixer, the man who moved millions in dark money, the man who ordered hits over steak dinners, was now the king of absolutely nothing. His accounts were seized. His friends had burned every bridge to save themselves. He was a ghost. He looked at his hands. They were shaking. The isolation was eating his mind, stripping away the layers of arrogance until only madness remained. "I am Atticus Langford," he whispered to the empty air, trying to remember who he was. "I matter. I matter." But the concrete walls didn't care. He started to scream again, a raw, primal sound of despair. He screamed until his throat bled, but the silence that followed was heavy, suffocating and eternal. The sun was setting over the Pacific, painting the sky in bruised hues of purple and orange. Emory Knight stood at the end of the Santa Monica Pier, leaning against the railing. The wind whipped his jacket, carrying the salt spray of the ocean. He held a paper cup of coffee in one hand, the warmth seeping into his fingers. The scars on his face from the mill fire had faded to thin white lines, but they were still there, a map of the war he'd fought. His phone buzzed. He looked at the screen. Director Yates. He swiped to answer. "Hello, Archer." "You didn't come in today." Yates's voice was gruff, but laced with concern. "Your suspension ended at midnight, Emory. Your badge is sitting on my desk, cleaned and polished." Emory took a sip of coffee, watching the waves crash against the pylons below. "I know. I just needed a minute." "It's been 6 months," Yates said. "The Bureau is asking questions. They want their star agent back. We have a new case, a trafficking ring moving through the port of Miami. It's big, Emory. Maybe bigger than Crestwood." Emory closed his eyes. He could still smell the smoke of the mill. He could still hear the screams of the girls they saved and the terrifying silence of the ones they couldn't. "We took down the dragon, Archer," Emory said softly. "But the fire, it burns you out. I look at people on the street and I wonder if they know how close the monsters are." "That's why they need us," Yates replied. "To stand in the gap. You're a legend here, kid. But legends don't retire at 23. Emory opened his eyes. He looked at the families walking on the pier behind him, tourists eating cotton candy, couples holding hands, kids running without a care in the world. They were safe. They were oblivious. And they were safe because he had walked into the fire. He felt the weight of the phantom badge on his chest. It was heavy, yes, but it was a weight he knew how to carry. "Miami, huh?" Emery asked, a small, grim smile touching his lips. Monday morning briefing, Yates said, the relief audible in his voice. 800 hours. Don't be late. I'll be there, Emery said. He hung up the phone and slipped it into his pocket. He finished his coffee and tossed the cup into a bin. He adjusted his collar against the wind. He looked older than his years. Harder. But his eyes were clear, burning with a renewed, cold resolve. He had walked through hell and come out the other side. Emery Knight turned his back on the ocean and began to walk back toward the city lights. The monsters were still out there, and someone had to hunt them. The story of Emery Knight and the takedown of the Crestwood corruption ring serves as a brutal reminder. Power is borrowed, not owned. Nicholas Bennett thought his badge was a shield for cruelty. Atticus Langford thought his money was a license to kill. Both forgot that when you push the world too hard, the world pushes back. Justice doesn't always come swiftly. Sometimes it has to be fought for in parking lots, in burning buildings, and in the gray areas of the law. But when it hits with the weight of a sledgehammer. If this story had you on the edge of your seat, smash that like button right now. It helps the channel grow so I can bring you more high-stakes drama like this. What do you think was the most satisfying moment? Was it Bennett realizing he was trapped, or Langford losing his immunity? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single one. And if you haven't already, hit subscribe and ring that notification bell. You do not want to miss the next story because next week we're diving into a heist that makes this look like a warm-up.